Hello and welcome to our program Violence Free World. My name is Kali Ikpe, and today I'm privileged to have a special guest in the house, the Executive Governor of Ekiti State and Chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum, John Kayode Fayemi. Excellency, you're welcome to our program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're going to come back here and continue the conversation, but after this special report, which is on Youth Restiveness and NGF's call for peace. Be here.
The year 2020 could pass as one of the most dramatic in human history, particularly for the deluge of high-octave events that characterized it. Nigeria, like the rest of the world, came under the weight of the COVID-19 pandemic with unprecedented consequences. Interestingly, just as major traces of COVID-19 were fading, the End SARS protest sparked up with a violent coloration, leaving in its wake looting, death, loss of business hours, and wanton destruction of properties, both public and private.
Subject, risk us! Carry what you think, carry brother!
What End SARS movement grew to one state finding out to another state. So it was really an opportunity for people to come out and voice their complaints. And, for example, in Niger, the End SARS was not against SARS as a police unit, but you give them the opportunity to come out and complain about bad roads, about power failure, and what have you.
It is perhaps much more interesting to note that a threat to embark on a national industrial action by the organized labor in Nigeria, anchored on a hike in electricity tariffs and pump price of petroleum products, remained unresolved. In the interim, efforts to restore normalcy ensued on multiple fronts, the most notable of which is the deep dives embarked upon by the Nigeria Governors Forum. Some of the events at least succeeded in bringing to the fore the disconnect between the nation's leadership and youth across the country. Youth in the country protested manifest economic neglect, unemployment, a poor learning environment, and the absence of basic health care, among many other issues plaguing the country. It is instructive to note that the End SARS protest elicited a prompt response from the leadership.
In my state, I went out to meet them and I told them what I'm saying to you here, that look, what you're doing, I'm 100% in support of. But you've made your point. The president have heard you. We as governors, we went to the president to tell him that, look, sir, time to talk to your children, and not a fellow Nigerian speech, father to children speech. I've heard you. You've made your point. Now it's time for you to return home.
The 5-point demand by the End SARS protesters had been acceded to with efforts in place to meet the demands, yet the deficit of trust continues to undermine the pronouncements and the efforts of state governments.
We as a government and as a people understood clearly, ab initio, the demands of the End SARS protesters. And I am the first governor that identified with them and supported them in their quest for a genuine agitation or protest.
The burden of rebuilding confidence seems to hang heavily on the shoulders of the Nigeria Governors Forum, NGF, which as a body is increasingly proving to be a very dependable arbiter. It is still to the credit of the NGF that considerable amounts of palliatives and healthcare packages were gotten from several international donor agencies, CACOVID, and the federal government.
people are talking about government holding palliative, the evidence was not in Jos. What the palliative that was looted in Jos was only brought a week. That was brought a week before it was looted. The first one that was brought about 3 months. The Kakovit were brought about 3 or 4 months, and those ones were distributed. All of them were distributed.
Many may also not remember that the NGF negotiated and ensured that a truce between organized labor and the government was achieved. NSAR's protests particularly may have put the forum and the individual governors of the 36 states across the country on auto drive as they assiduously worked to win the confidence of the people. But the impatience on the side of the people has remained its bane.
Welcome back. Okay, now with regards to the NSAS, even though a 5-point demand was put forward to which the government say we have ceded to, it is obvious now that the issues are actually legion, bordering on poverty, injustice, and all sorts. Now, by what happened, do you feel that it implies a vote of no confidence on the present leadership?
I don't think so. It's in the nature of younger people to agitate. I spent a great deal of my young life, even though some might still consider me a young person now, but my younger life, I spent a great deal of my younger life at the barricades protesting against bad governance, what I perceived as bad governance, protesting against military dictatorship, protesting in support of a democratic orientation for our country. And I was labeled a persona non grata in that regard. I was in exile as a result of that. So I would not see anything that young people are doing as necessarily a personal indictment of the leadership. They were very specific, in my view, about what they wanted to change. Police brutality. So they wanted a particular wing of the police force to be disbanded. The president acceded to that. The Inspector General of Police implemented that. They wanted the cells in which many Nigerians had been held by that particular section of the police force to be freed of people who are in such cells. Again, it was acceded to. They wanted better welfare for police personnel, and I think that's commendable. Usually when young people agitate, it's for themselves, but this was a broader approach to agitation. They wanted investigations into what had transpired, and in 25 out of 36 states, we have set up judicial panel of inquiries that are currently sitting on these issues and examining based on those who come forward to say, we have been badly treated by SARS, we want to put this before the panel that has been set up, we demand compensation, we demand accountability, and we want subsequent responsibility on the part of the police and the law enforcement authorities. Again, that's been accepted. And fifth, they talk about medical evaluation, psychological evaluation of those who are going to go into such institutions in future. Absolutely sensible. There's no issue, but you can't do medical evaluation in one fell swoop. It's something that would have to happen over time. So for me, those were specific. But what lessons that I expected that our younger folk would have also drawn from this was that every agitation, every protest must have exit strategy.
True.
Once you don't have an exit strategy, you run the risk of losing the momentum in favor of what you are protesting against, and it being hijacked by those who may not necessarily share your well-intentioned agenda. And we also saw that in the NSAS movement. It's okay, it may be sexy to have a leaderless movement, but when it comes to brass tacks, somebody needs to speak for you in respect of those issues that are important to you vis-a-vis government. In my state, I went out to meet them, and I told them what I'm saying to you here, that look, what you're doing, I'm 100% in support of. But you've made your point. The president have heard you. We as governors, we went to the president to tell him that, look, sir, time to talk to your children, and not a fellow Nigerian speech, father to children speech. Have heard you. You've made your point. Now it's time for you to return home so that we can attend to those issues that you have raised.
Now, there's something that came up in the course of the NSAS protests, like you said, when it was hijacked and then we started seeing palliatives looted, even though the NGF as a body actually responded to the issue of hoarding of palliatives, you understand. But these things came up, and that was very, very difficult to convince or persuade anyone that they meant otherwise, that these things were being reserved somehow. I don't know, that you must have probably felt embarrassed when you saw all of that looting, where people, it only showed the level of hunger in the land, but that went on. But going forward, so you can just respond in one full swoop to the issue of the welfare for the police. Is it rocket science for this thing? Because that's seen as a catalyst for why they behave the way they behave, erratically rather. And this keeps happening up to this very moment, and we're not very certain if that can be attained. Please, would you want to comment?
Two questions you've asked. One about welfare of the law enforcement agents, the second about palliatives.
Yes.
Let me answer the one on welfare first. No, it's not rocket science, and I don't think government has said anything about it being rocket science. But precisely because it's not rocket science, the explanation is simple. There is a huge deficit of trust between the governors, and I'm using governors grammatically as those in charge of governments, either at the federal or at the state levels, and the governed. That is why somebody would imagine that a governor will be interested in hoarding bags of Indomie that they don't even eat, that they have no interest in. Unfortunately, that was the impression that a larger majority of the population went away with. That's part of the evil of social media. States have distributed hundreds of thousands of palliatives to their citizens, particularly the most vulnerable segment of the population, long before COVID. And COVID is the coalition of corporate sector players that also decided to do this as their own corporate social responsibility, chaired by Alhaji Aliko Dangote, the governor of Central Bank, a lot of the big MDs of the multinationals in Nigeria. But the process was actually controlled by COVID, not by the governors, to the extent that even when the various items had been collected, delivered to the states, COVID insisted that they should not be distributed until they've been flagged off by the states. So the state got blamed for still having those things for the states that had not been flagged off. They got blamed for a directive.
That's a tactical challenge to which I'm sure there's so much of regret as far as that is concerned.
It may be regretted, but many states feel very, very unhappy about this because they didn't actually feel that the corporate donors had categorically explained this to the ordinary citizens. Even if they did, I'm not sure the ordinary people were interested in such explanation. I mean, we didn't have any palliatives in Ekiti at the time this happened, but they still went to our state emergency warehouse and treated maize that we were preparing for the planting season
and categorize it as palliatives being hoarded somewhere. That's unfortunate. Well, okay, we're going to take a break now. I will come back after this time out. Welcome back. Okay, the NSAS protests revealed some structural deficiency, something that especially to do with the strength of the Nigerian police, the numerical strength, and even capacity generally. Shouldn't we begin to see this as a wake-up call to now actualize this ever issue of state police now?
Well, I don't know whether that's something that specifically responds to the need for multi-level policing. I do not necessarily talk about state policing. The reason is simple. When you say state police in several circles, automatically the impression that is created is that you want a disbandment of federal police. And that's not the position of the Governors Forum. The Governors Forum believes in multi-level policing, in which you have federal police because there are federal crimes. But you also have state police, you have local government police, and you have community police. Because these are jurisdictional issues. And there are crimes that are inter-boundary crimes. There are crimes that are inter-border crimes that you would require the international police, Interpol, to come into. Interpol will not come and deal with a state. Interpol would only deal with federal police. So we are not averse or opposed to federal police. We're just saying that in matters that concerns people in our various states, it's better that the law enforcement agency is closer to the root of the problem and is being managed by people who understand the dynamics of that particular society.
True. Inclusiveness, it seems, is critical to assuaging youth. Being a proactive leader, there must be some things, some programs that you've put in place or that are ongoing to ensure you connect better with the younger people in your state. I'm talking to you now as the governor of Ekiti State. Now, Excellency, is this something you want to share with us? Some of these things that we do not already know in terms of plans.
Well, I don't know what you know about my state. The youth in my state, they are very active. I engage them regularly, averagely on a monthly basis. I engage the leadership of the youth groups in the state. We have substantive initiatives on mentoring our younger people. We have what we call Ikogosi Graduate Summer School, for example, which is for younger elements who wants to go into leadership positions, who wants to prepare themselves for responsibilities in future. We also have our youth volunteer scheme, which attaches our young people who are on a voluntary scheme to various departments of governments as a means of preparing themselves also for the job market. But what is also important to me is to bring in younger people into government. So I've also done quite a lot of that in my state.
That's noted, that's taken. As we went down, Excellency, another form kind of unrest seemed to be brewing, especially in the South, on the occasion of Zamfara State's recent attitude of owning resources. I know that you used to be the minister of solid minerals, and now we know that everything under the ground belongs to the federal government, we believe. Why is the Zamfara State's issue proving to be this difficult, and what are you doing to help resolve this once and for all?
Again, this is one of such areas where propaganda trumps facts. Quite apart from being the former Minister of Mines in this country, I have taken the pain to actually investigate what happened in Zamfara. And what happened is a product of a policy that I started, not what people are proclaiming it to be. Zamfara State certainly set up special purpose vehicles, which was what we put in the law. States are not allowed to be involved in minerals development because it's on the exclusive list of our constitution. However, if you are a company, you have a right to approach the Ministry of Mines for license to mine in whatever jurisdiction you can mine. The same applies to those. There are companies that exist belonging to states in the South in partnership with private sector organizations. What simply happened in Zamfara was that they applied to the Ministry of Mines under what we started, which is what we call the Presidential Artisanal Gold Mining Initiative, PAGMI. I started that as Minister of Mines to assist artisans who are cheated out of their mined gold by middlemen, mostly Chinese, and paid peanuts. So we decided that we would approach the Central Bank of Nigeria to invest in gold reserve, give us a commitment that they will buy this gold if it is refined. So we agreed that 2 states will be the pilots, Kebbi State and Osun State. And by the time I left, other states had come on board this initiative, including Zamfara State. So Zamfara has not broken any law to the best of my knowledge. It has approached this via a special purpose vehicle that it set up. And the Federal Ministry of Mines has also come out to explain this to the Nigerian public that, look, we are aware of what happened in Zamfara. We gave the special purpose vehicle the license to conduct this business.
So as is where right now the issue is resolved.
There was no issue to be resolved.
Well,
this is a media creation again.
I'm very grateful for this opportunity to help clear the air on this once and for all. Finally, as we leave, sir, I'd like you to give your word of advice to young people who are increasingly believing that when they resort to violence, sometimes, just like they have seen a lot of people who are perpetrators of violence, become very, very comfortable and celebrated, even being made kings, chiefs here and there. That is not a way of life. Let's get your word of advice across to these people.
Clearly, there's no way violence can be a way of life. I have been involved in activism all my life. Student union activism, pro-democracy activism. I have never, at any point, resorted to violence in order to get what I was agitating for. And you may say, okay, maybe, oh, you're lucky, your situation is exceptional. I don't think so. But I do think we need to find a way to mentor our young people to see the value in protest. Protest is a good thing. But to know that you have to stop agonizing. You have to organize in order to get the results that you want to get. And young people, frankly, all of us need to impress it on our young people that time to drop that sense of entitlement. Government has not done this for me. Oh, this is why I've not done this to me. My government, nobody owes you anything. You owe yourself the right to succeed, the determination to succeed, the capacity to make a difference. And God, being on your side, will make it happen. But you must put in your very best effort to make things happen.
Excellency, at this point, I'd like to thank you very much for finding time to oblige us. You will always be in an interviewer's delight any day. Thank you very much for obliging us again.
Thank you very much for having me on your program, Kyle.
All right. Well, I've been talking with His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Ekiti State, John Kayode Fayemi, who is also the Chairman of Nigeria Governors Forum. Same time next week promises even a better edition if you endeavor to be here. Until then, thank you very much for watching, and please remember to remain on the road to a violence-free Nigeria.
No more to violence, no more we're crying out, no more to all the killings, no, no, no more to violence, no more we're crying out, no more to all the killings, no, no, no more, say make you no delay for that, cause the way the thing they go, peace is all we need to make the water settle. So basically we dey struggle inside ghetto. What is supposed to